What's up, everybody? My name's Kevin Toppenberg. I've been restoring a Bridgeport mill. It's a brisk December morning. I got frost on my window there here in East Tennessee. Today we got a good show. We're going to work on getting the motor put back together. Actually, we're going to take it apart, clean it, get it put back together, making it look nice. We're going to work on getting the VFD set up, and we're going to make a custom container to hold it all. And by the time we're all done, we're going to get it running. If you enjoy it, please give it a thumbs up and some comments, and stay tuned. That's looking good. There's something missing though. What is missing? What goes right here? That's the last piece, the motor. I took apart this motor to clean it, and I decided that I would change it. The color had been kind of like that, and I thought it would be nice to have it match the green of the lower part. So I have painted around here and the top. I painted it with a paintbrush, and there's a little bit of brush marks in there, but I think it'll be okay. And then this is the other piece. First thing, I'm going to put on the bottom plate, and often between the bearing and the housing there's what's called a wavy washer, but there was only one at the top, not on the bottom one on this motor. And actually, I think I can do it this way. The next part needs to be this. This has to go over here. This is a rubber mounting, provides a flat surface. And then there'll be a bolt that goes through it and connects into here. And then that will establish the grounding between the shield, and then the barrel switches is going to be right here. I'm trying to keep on the outside force pushing, I guess, to your right. Trying to work that in. Now we get to the hard part. Almost there, almost there. And we're in, woohoo! Excellent. All right, now this has to go on here, and these wires, there are 3 sets of wires that go through here. And then there's a third one that's got a wire cap on it that stays on the inside. Okay, I have already run this motor once. I took it down to Knox Maker and turned it on, and it sounded real good. All right, here's these wavy washers up here. There was a bit of grease in here. I'm not sure what the point of that is, but I'll put in a little bit more grease to replace it. Kind of replacing what I think might have come out. I see that there are 4 holes, and I bet I didn't get that clocked right. That makes me unhappy. Okay, I took this back off, and then lined up the screws so that they were all straight through, and I can get down to the faceplate. Carefully get that washer back out with it. Now we can put this back on. I'll get that tightened up. Next we have this, which I think is supposed to be a fan. Doesn't really look like much of a fan to me. And it's held on with a set screw. Next we'll get the cap on. Okay. Next is this drum switch, and I'm just running a file over the contacts. They actually look pretty good, but I thought I would just spruce them up a little bit. All right, those all look good. All right, now this thing goes on here. Okay, before we do that, I got to get my screw situation fixed up. When I pulled the mounting bolts, these are the 2 that I got. And if you look, that head is bent. So what I'm going to do, I was lucky in my bucket of bolts. I have one that's the same pitch, but it's a little bit longer. So I've got to use a bolt to mark how long it was. I'm going to use a hacksaw to cut it off. And then when I unscrew the bolt, if there's any burrs, it will hopefully take those out. And just like that, I've got it. It's the right length. The bolt screws off nicely. I'm very happy that the heads match. All right, I'm gonna get that mounted. Okay, next we've got to hook up these wires. I don't know if anyone watched my video on the lathe restoration, but I had a devil of a time figuring out the barrel switch. I had to get someone on the internet to help me. I was very careful to label these wires this time so that they should just go back where they're supposed to. And lastly, we'll put this back on. There she is. Yikes, you might have been able to see it better than I. There's a wire sticking out here. I'm gonna replace that and get that on right. You're not gonna believe this. This base is clocked 90 degrees from what it should be. I gotta take it all apart and rotate it. Not happy. 15 fiddly minutes later, I've got it back together again. It wasn't all in loss. That wire that had been sticking out before was the ground wire. And I noticed here that even if it just went in, it catches on the drum strip. So I actually had to reroute the ground wire so it's just right along this wall here. And then that way it won't have problems when it rotates. It rotates fine. Now I'm gonna try to get it up onto the mill. I keep forgetting steps. I've got to put my step pulley on next. Now I had some trouble getting this off. I even had to use a bearing puller. Ended up taking a nick off the bottom of this, which I'm not happy about. It's not enough that I'm gonna replace it. I probably won't end up using that one anyway. It's the hazards of the repair. But anyway, I put a 3/4 inch reamer in here, got the inside all nice and cleaned out, used sandpaper on the outside. I also put on the mounting pegs. The knob that was for the tightener, I swapped that to a new knob. So now I think we're ready to put it on the mill. Here goes nothing. And it's on. This is the drive belt I put on, by the way. It was replacing the one that came off. It's at A33. It's 1/2 by 35 in case anyone wants to know. Now, as I was afraid, there's a lot of places where the paint kind of tore off because it wasn't fully dry. So I'm gonna have to come back and touch that up a little bit later. And I've got to get that spaced right so that the arm is right at the right clocking to tighten it up. But it's looking good. Well, my friends, what do you think? It's pretty much done, except for I'm gonna come back and do a little touch up. Otherwise, I think that's about as good as I can get. I gotta figure out a power supply for 3-phase power. I have bought a variable frequency drive. I've gotta get that all wired up. Anyway, I'm happy. Woo! I like it. It's still raining like crazy. Even got a little water going down the gully down there. I had flooding coming into the basement of my house. I had to get up my shop vac, vacuum that all out. There are severe thunderstorm and warnings and flash flood warnings coming over my phone. I took a couple of shots of the plug that I needed to match. This was a 20 amp one. I'm working on an enclosure for this. Of course, it'll be sitting like that. It needs a top, which needs to be vented, so I may do something separate with that. And here I've got this all marked out and cut with my saber saw. So now I gotta figure out how to get it bent. I have what I'm hoping to be a lid laid out here. I've got a double fold, which I'm hoping is gonna be a pocket to receive the tab from the other part of the box. So let me try to get this cut out. This is my poor man's sheet metal brake. I want to get this knocked out. So I got just a piece of metal bar to give me width and a vise, and I'm gonna try to bend this. We will see how it works. It's pretty thin metal, so I think I may get away with it. Well, that took quite a lot of doing. I had to try this and that, and felt like a dog trying to turn around and around to find a place to lay down. But with a combination of hammering, keeping that metal bar in there, which was about a 1/16 thick, and bending it over, I was finally able to get it enough that I was able to bring it into the vise and then clamp it flat. I then replaced the bar with a piece of sheet metal. It has a nice tight fit. It will go in there and it'll like pinch it. So that's what it looks like on the end. Now, I'm gonna try doing the inner fold first. I think it might be easier, but we will see. Boy, it's not easy. I wish I had a break. That fold went better. I may be getting the hang of it. You can see here I left a 1/16 for the radius of the fold, which may have been more than I needed, but I think I got the length fairly close. It's off just a little bit on this side. That may just be a tiny bit out of square. We'll have to see when it goes together. One thing I did make a mistake on was to not leave a tab here to fold back so I don't have a sharp edge. So that's gonna be towards the opening. I'm thinking maybe I can get a piece of foam and go along the edge so it's not like a knife edge. All right, last fold to go on this one. Okay, here I have it. The second fold. It's not up nice the way it's supposed to be. It doesn't really matter. It means the pocket will be a little bit deeper than it should be. It's just, that's the best that I can do with my technique. All right, so I'm gonna trim that off with the saber saw, and this part will be done, and we'll start work on that. Okay, let me give a quick update. I drew out a grid here, and I used a center drill to drill each one of these. Had to actually do it on both sides because as it went through it kind of splayed out, so I had to flip it over and then take off all those burrs. I've decided I'm going to have this part to be the bottom and the flat part to be the top, and then I've cut these which are going to be air slits, and I'm going to bend out the lower part of each of those and then work on getting it bent together. Okay, I've got these tabs bent up. I clamped the part on the edge here and then hammered down so that this part would be supported and then that part would go down. I did that for each of these, got those all bent out. So now I've got these two to go. This would be a perfect place for a break. I'm going to do the best I can to try to get it. Well, I've got it bent up pretty well. I think that looks pretty nice overall. But I just realized a big mistake I made. Let me show you. So this part that I was planning on being the bottom, it's actually the size of the front. Now I could make it be the bottom, but then the holes actually, you know, would be coming right up to the edge of the holes. So I think what I might do is turn this into a door. I had been planning on getting like a plexiglass front, but I think that actually kind of looks nice as well. I put some hinges on that, so I may just come back and do it again with the proper size for the bottom. Okay, let's try again. I got it all cut out, only to realize I made it an inch too narrow. I made it 8 inches instead of 9 inches. Oh boy, I got another one. Well, 17th time is a charm. All right, let me see if I can get this in here. I decided I would put a lip. We'll see how that looks. Let me hammer it on in. I think that'll work good. All right, the floor fits nicely. I decided I didn't like those fold backs for holding it together down at the bottom. I thought it's going to look bad on the outside. So I flipped it around, and now they're on the inside, or at least it'll be out of sight when the door's closed. That lip was then sticking downwards, which didn't make much sense, so I just folded it back. It's not too bad in there, but I thought, let me try putting in a floor to hide all that. So I've made one with some folds to go under those tabs. I tried to make a bigger radius to go over this extra part, so I'm going to try to get that in. And here we have it. That floor fits in there just perfectly. around over that. So it holds together pretty well. I don't know if you can see here, it holds together pretty well with just friction, but these sides can come outward. I'd like to find one of those spot welders. I may keep an eye out for that, because if I could just put in a couple spots, I think it would be nicer than a screw and nut. So I like that. Now I got to figure out a way to fit this on. I'm gonna need some inside cabinet hinges, and I'll need some sort of a stop inside there, and I'll probably put like a magnet and then a knob to open and close, and the magnet will keep it shut. It's coming along. It looks nice. Give you a quick update. I have wire wheeled this. I'm gonna paint it. I'm not gonna paint the inside, that's why I left that, still have the galvanization. I wasn't sure how to find a spot welder, so I went ahead and put bolts in there to hold it together. 4 more down there. I've also purchased some hinges, and I had to take it apart and flip it around to get it such that it would open the way I need it to. So I've worked on that. I got the holes all drilled, and I'll show that after I get it painted. So let me go ahead and get a coat of paint on this. I want to give an update where I am so far. There's a lot about this enclosure that I'm not happy about, but the idea is not so much that it's perfect, but that it's something that I was able to make. And this is the best that I could do, so it's not bad. I did decide to spray paint the inside black after all. It's, you know, a little rough where it went over the galvanized part, but I think it's okay. I got these cabinet hinges that I had to take apart and then flip that over and then get that mounted. I then took one of the knobs that I replaced from the mill, and then I had a little brass ring, and then I have a plastic bushing that actually went on the inside to keep this thing centered, and I've got that mounted. And I'm gonna need to come back and do a little bit of touch up where the overspray from the black came out, but I can do that. But that's where we're at so far. Now I want to mount this on the column, but the column is not completely flat, so I'm going to need to have, not only does the column lean forward, but then the column has a curvature. So I measured that out and got this piece of paper cut out. That's what the curve of the up part of the column looks like. That's what the curve of the bottom part looks like. And I was able to use, I have a curve copying tool. It's kind of cool. So now on my open SCAD, I've got this part on the right here is a model of the column. The way I did that, first took a picture of this, imported it into GIMP, then made a path that followed that, then exported that path as an SVG file, imported the SVG file, and then I did a linear extrude, so each one's like 1 millimeter at the top, like that. So I have the top curve and the bottom curve, and then I put a hull around it. So now I'm gonna have legs that come out, and I'm gonna subtract off this thing that represents the column, and then hopefully that'll give the right curvature for the mill side of those feet. This tool right here is pretty cool. I inherited it from my dad. That was my dad's toolbox, and when I was growing up, I would see this thing, and he would tell me you could copy a curve with it. I'm like, why would you ever want to do that? And I actually never saw him use it. And here, like 40 years later, I finally had a reason to use it. Put that on there like that, and you can copy the curve, and that's how I put it onto the paper and was able to model it. So I only took 40 years to use a tool, but boy, it came in handy. I 3D modeled these pieces. I have a counter set nut to go for my 1032 bolt. And I made a recess where I had bought some 10 millimeter by like 1.6 millimeter neodymium magnets. And I've got that so they'll go right here. Got a bolt that will go on there. I'm gonna have it raised up just a little bit. That matches the amount that it's raised up here. And also there's a lip from this. So that'll be up so that the door will come down and touch that plastic and then be attracted by the magnets. And that'll help hold the door closed. But I want to spray paint them black so that they'll match the inside. So let me get that done. It's been a couple of days, so I'm going to give a quick update. I've got mounting holes, both for the VFD and then also for the device. I've got these blocks, which I 3D printed, and I just spray painted in black. I then have, it's a little bit tricky getting that. I had to, let's see, what did I do? I think I first put on one of the blocks and the box, and then used a transfer punch and got the first one, and then put a bolt in that one, put the block behind, did a transfer punch for the second one, located the holes, and then drilled and tapped those. Even with that, you know, as I'm drilling, I don't think it was exactly parallel this way. So as I'm putting them in, sometimes the screws are binding up a little bit. I hope that's not going to be a problem when I go to mount it. I've decided I'm going to use this extension cord to take the face off. This face unit comes off, and then I'm going to mount it in a control box like that. And so then I need an extension cord there, and then the other end plugs here, and then there's little screw holes to fasten it. This cord is like 10 feet. So I need a way to get that extension cord into the box. Power I'm gonna have coming down from the bottom, and the manual says that sometimes the power will interfere with the digital signals on that. So I'm trying to separate it. So I think I'm gonna have it come in at the top. And I'm gonna need to have a hole that's big enough for the plug to go through. So I'm gonna need to cut that out and then figure out some way to make that edge so it's not rough. My local Lowe's doesn't have any edge stripping. I've seen some I can buy on Amazon, but I may try just taking some of this clear tubing and slitting it and put that over. I'll see if that works. All right, that's where I'm at. Here I've got it mounted. My holes that I thought I measured and drilled and tapped so carefully really did not line up well, and I ended up having to open up the holes in the back of that cabinet quite a bit to allow them to move and to get centered in there. And the fit is not exact, but it looks okay. I've got this wired up. Got my 220 coming in as a line, the 3-phase coming out as to the motor, and that goes to this. That there will go to the 220 plug, and then this is the cable. It's got screws so it won't get pulled off, and then that comes out through that hole down there. And so now I need to get it mounted. I've had it on and off a couple of times. It's a little bit of a hassle. Well, I've been working a good part of the day today. I wasn't gonna be able to get what I needed to get done accomplished if I did it on camera, and I'm not sure you would have been interested in all the tedious parts anyway. So let me just show you what I've got done, and I think we kind of got a little bit of a milestone. I've got this mounted. Got my power coming in. That was where the motor will get plugged in. Of course, it's right here right now. I'm gonna have to figure out some cord management there. I've got this plug coming in to the VFD there. Cable comes out. Right now it goes up and over. It goes to here. And this was an old project box I found in the project supply area down at Knox Makers. And it was some sort of a video output signal. I trimmed all the stuff out from the inside, cut a square out to fit this, and that was really difficult because this aluminum's not a huge amount thicker than a Coca-Cola can, but I was able to get that. And then I've got these two bars, the same bars that I used when I was making that frame over there. Put two of them together. There's holes in here for access holes, and then I've got a machine screw. Say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them. I then made this mounting bracket, got a piece of steel, heated it up with my acetylene torch, bent it, drilled and tapped here. This is at an angle, so I got to have some spacers behind there to make it somewhat level. And that's there. So next steps are, I think I'm going to plug it in so I get some power for the VFD, and then I've got to go through and set up some parameters that match the motor, and then it might be ready to go. If you notice, I left a hole here. There was already a hole, but I left that, and I thought I might try to get an E-stop, but to do an E-stop, I'm gonna have to run a separate wire in addition to that all the way back and then figure out how to connect it in, and it was kind of complicated, so I may or may not be able to succeed in that. I've got this that needs to be mounted right there. One other thing I'm gonna add, the bottom of this I thought was gonna be really thin such that it would just, you know, warp out. So if you can see here, I've got 3 other layers, and that's with some old license plates that expired. Tennessee has changed their numbering system to add another digit. So I cut out a piece that would sit down inside the floor, and then I put screws up through it there to strengthen the floor, so I think that'll work better. I'm gonna take this old-fashioned looking blue and make it more generic black. I've got the full can and then a can I don't know if I have much left in it. All right, she's a goner. I'll do that as the first coat. I got a hand wheel from some company called Zorro. It came with this wheel, the knob, which I've put on, and then three total. I've got one on the mill already, and then 2 extras. So let me show you this. I've already put that on. This slides over it. But if you notice, there's a little hole right there, and then there's a pin right there that's supposed to slide in. But look at it, just is short of where it needs to go. So that pin needs to have a greater radius from here. So there's a hole provided there, and I thought maybe this was for a near and far, and I measured it, and they're actually both from the inner wall of that hole to the inner aspect of this 140 thousandths on both of them. So I'm going to need to come in and drill up a hole there, and I have to figure out how I can do that precisely. So if you can see, I've measured out right there to the center, which should be 60 thousandths farther out than right there. So now I'm going to try to put 120 thousandths hole in. All right, I got my poor man's milling machine here, my drill press. Got it in some parallels. I got the line I've just touched off, and I am in fact in there. Now I need to go 375 deep. So how are we going to do that? Let me figure that out. I was going to try to use this nut and measure it out, but it is not precise work, and I realized I have an indicator, so I'm just going to use that. All right, so that's right at the top. So 100, 200, 375. Well, I tested it and the radial distance is correct, but the pin is sticking out too far. So it's leaving a 1/4 inch gap between here and the face that it's supposed to mate up to. So I'm going to take this another 250 thousandths deeper. All right, get my pin back in there. All right, seems to work. All right. Okay, I want to put a cord hanger on the back here. Thought is I'm going to have a piece of metal that kind of comes down, in, down, and this part will be bolted up against the back and then out and then down again. And then I'll be able to wrap the electrical cord around here, kind of like you would a garden hose, to take up the slack. I've got a piece of, this looks like maybe 1/4 inch square, and I've got 6-inch segments, 6-inch, 6-inch, so that'll be each of the arms. And then 12 inches for the gap, and then another 6, and I've got these ends rounded off. So I'm gonna get a torch and heat that up, and then bend that a right angle this way, and then I'll then bend the other right angle that way, and then the same over here, and then I'll try to drill some holes through there to get it mounted. That's my plan. Okay, there it is. One arm is slightly taller than the other, but because that back is at an angle, it's going to be in there at an angle. And I even thought about bending it out a little bit so it would be vertical to the floor. Perpendicular to the floor. But I decided it doesn't really matter. I don't think it'll be noticeable. All right, now I'm going to let it cool a little bit. I need to put some mounting holes in here and then drill and tap in the back of that column. Okay, here I've got it on. There's just some 832 screws. I wanted to have something that was relatively narrow, so I still had some meat left after I put a hole through that small 1/4 inch steel. I kind of miscalculated how much I was going to need. This is a lot longer than it needs to be. Part of me is wondering whether I should either shorten those or maybe curve it in somehow. I don't know, it's not protruding from the box, so I don't think it's really going to be risk, and I've got it rounded, so it's not sharp. That one I think would look better if it was in, but it's nice to get those cords nice and neat. Okay, here's an update. I got that painted black. Hooray, my e-stop button came. I used a Cat 5 cable because I have a whole spool of it up there. And the wires that come out of this socket are blue, white, and green. And the Cat 5 had a blue and white pair. So I did the blue part of the blue and white pair to this blue, and then the one that had more white to this one. And then there was a green and white pair, and I put the green of that pair to this. So obviously the other wires won't be used. I also put zip ties every 6 inches all the way back. Got that some extra wrapped up there. I took out, before I had some spacers here because I thought, the idea to let it move. But in fact, I don't want it to move because when I push this, I don't want the whole thing to move. I instead just want the button to click. So I took that out, tightened that up tighter, so now it's metal on metal. Did the same thing under here, took out that gap. In fact, this little spacer had been up there. I'm putting it there just to kind of have some vibration or something in case I want to put it back later. So that's there. Now I'm going to put the top on, and I think this part will be all wrapped up. I did go back and bend those ends in with the torch, and I got it spray painted. So I'm going to get that all wired back, get that wound back on there. And we are getting close to putting power to the VFD, and then I've got to figure out what to do about that e-stop, how to get that wired in, and then also put the motor parameters in. All right, I've got power to the VFD. Nothing there. That's just, I still haven't hooked up that messaging line. But she's alive! All right, so check it out. I've got the manual up here, and I've been looking through the parameters, and it looks like the default parameters that it has in there are correct. I had to change one parameter, which was to make this as a dial input for the frequency. And now watch. Hey! That's pretty cool. All right, I've been trying to read through this and it's confusing to me. I'm gonna have someone help me get this e-stop wired up. But that's a big step point. I'm very happy. All right, I contacted the product support at Automation Direct. They were helpful. They said to connect the circuit that is normally open between forward, and then the other leg would be in DCM, and then the switch that is normally closed to be to reverse and DCM. So those are the three, the white, blue, and green are the three that come out of the switch up there. And I've got that supported here so that it won't get yanked. And let's make sure this goes back on. All right, I think we're ready to try it. I just got off the phone with Automation Direct. It's the place I bought the VFD from. It was about $200, which is maybe $100 more than another one that I had bought on eBay in the past. The one I bought on eBay lasted about a year, and it had a manual that was completely unintelligible. I just couldn't figure anything out. The manual from the one from Automation Direct is 600 pages. It's got tons of information. But even with that, I was a little overwhelmed. I called Automation Direct. The guy got on the phone with me, stayed with me, walked through, told me how to switch the wires, told me what parameters to put in. Their website says they got the best customer support in the business, and I think it's 100% true. And big shout out, I think it's well worth the money, to have actually a product that you can use. So here, all right, check this out. It's running. E-stop, it's gone. All right. And then it flashes EF1, you reset it, press reset, and you're back and good to go. I'm happy with that. And again, big shout out to Automation Direct. All right, I'm gonna cut it off there. Hope you enjoyed all that. Here's a sneak peek from next time. Not doing anything. That doesn't sound good. What's that? Peace out.